Right now, there's a vote happening in Florida that could decide whether your retirement savings stretch further or get quietly drained by your own city hall. On November 3rd, Florida voters decide on a property tax amendment that sounds like a win for retirees. But buried inside it is a 5-year rule that could leave new movers paying more than their neighbors for years. If you're even thinking about retiring to Florida, you need to know this before you sign anything. Here's exactly what's at stake. How we got here. This didn't come out of nowhere. Back in February of 2026, the Florida House of Representatives passed House Joint Resolution 203 by an unusually lopsided vote of 80 to 30. That bill was designed to phase out non-school property taxes over time. It looked like it had real momentum, but when it reached the Senate during the spring session, it stalled out completely. The April special session ended without any deal on property tax reform at all. That could have been the end of it for the year. Instead, lawmakers came back for a summer special session, held June 1st through June 3rd, 2026, and this time, instead of pushing multiple competing proposals, the legislature consolidated everything into a single measure House Joint Resolution 1F, officially nicknamed the Save Our Homes from Excessive Property Taxes Amendment. It passed the House 75 to 26 and the Senate 30 to 9. Those are strong margins, which tells you there's real political will behind this on both sides of the aisle. But, and this is critical for you to understand, passing the legislature does not make this law. Because this is a constitutional amendment, it doesn't take effect just because lawmakers voted for it. It now goes directly to Florida voters on the November 3rd, 2026 general election ballot, and it needs at least 60% voter approval to pass. Not a simple majority, 60%. That's a high bar, and it's the same threshold that has sunk other Florida constitutional amendments in the past, even ones with majority public support. What the amendment actually does. So what's actually in HJR 1F? At its core, this expands the homestead property tax exemption significantly beyond where it sits today, and it creates a framework for phasing out most homestead property taxes over a longer period of time. If it passes, most of the substantive provisions would begin taking effect on January 1st, 2027. Now here's the detail that I think matters most for anyone watching this channel, anyone who's planning a retirement move, not someone who already owns a home in Florida. The amendment includes a 5-year residency requirement for full benefits. If you are not already a permanent Florida resident as of December 31st, 2026, you would only receive a partial exemption, specifically on the first $50,000 of your home's assessed value. You would not get the full homestead exemption that longtime residents receive until you've lived in Florida for 5 consecutive years. Think about what that means in practice. 2 people buy nearly identical homes in the same Florida neighborhood. One has lived there for a decade. The other just relocated from out of state in 2027. Under this amendment, those 2 homeowners would not be treated equally at the property tax office, even though they're paying the same price for the same house. The newcomer phases in gradually over 5 years before reaching full parity. This is by design. According to the bill's own framing, the goal is to protect longtime Floridians and reward established residency, rather than handing the biggest tax break to people who are just arriving to take advantage of it. If you're planning your move, that's not a reason to panic, but it is a reason to think carefully about timing. Where the money comes from or doesn't. Here's the part that local governments are extremely worried about, and it's worth understanding because it could affect you in ways beyond your own property tax bill. Legislative analysts have estimated that if this amendment passes, local governments across Florida could lose approximately $4.6 billion in tax revenue in the very first year alone. And that number doesn't shrink after year 1. Analysts project ongoing annual losses of around $8.4 billion every year. After that, with no automatic mechanism built into the amendment to replace that lost revenue. Now, the amendment does try to address this on paper. It specifies that whatever property tax revenue local governments still collect can only be spent on 7 categories. Public safety, like police, fire, and EMS public education infrastructure, such as roads, bridges, and stormwater systems, natural resource and flood control projects, existing bond and debt service obligations, retirement benefits for local government employees, and basic government operations and administration. That sounds reasonable in theory, but critics, including local officials, public finance experts, and organizations like the Tax Foundation, are warning that an $8 billion a year hole doesn't just disappear because you've restricted the spending categories. Counties and cities generally have three options when they lose that much revenue cut: services, raise other fees and taxes to compensate, or both. So if you're moving to Florida expecting lower property taxes, but the same level of local services, road maintenance, emergency response times, parks, libraries, that's a genuine open question this amendment doesn't fully answer yet. The fight over the ballot language itself. There's one more wrinkle you need to know about, because it shows just how contested this is. On June 11, 2026, two former Florida mayors, along with a newly formed nonprofit organization, filed a lawsuit in Leon County Circuit Court. They are not challenging what the amendment actually does. Instead, they're challenging how it will be described to voters on the ballot itself. Their argument is that the official ballot summary is written in a way that reads more like an advertisement for the amendment than a neutral, factual description of its effects. That lawsuit is still working its way through the courts as of this recording. Depending on the outcome, the wording voters actually see in November could change. This matters because ballot language has a well-documented effect on how people vote, especially on complex tax measures that most people don't have time to research in depth. Keep an eye on that case. I'll be covering any updates the moment they happen. What this means for you right now. So let's bring this back to the question you're actually asking: should this change your retirement plans? First, understand where we stand today. As of right now, nothing has legally changed. Florida property taxes are still being assessed, calculated, and collected exactly the way they always have been. If you're closing on a home in Florida this year, you should not assume any reduction or elimination of property taxes applies to your purchase. Base your affordability calculations on current rates, not on what might happen after November. Second, if you are seriously considering a move to Florida, timing now carries more weight than it used to. Because of that 5-year residency phase-in, establishing Florida residency before December 31st, 2026 could put you on a meaningfully different track than waiting until 2027 or later. That's not financial advice telling you to rush a major life decision. It's simply a factor that now belongs in your spreadsheet alongside home prices, insurance costs, and healthcare access. Third, don't evaluate this purely as a tax story. If local governments really do lose billions in annual revenue, service levels are part of your quality of life equation too, especially if you're planning to rely on local emergency services as you age in place. What happens next? Here's your timeline. Between now and November 3rd, watch for two things: the outcome of that Leon County lawsuit over ballot wording, and any polling on whether this amendment is tracking toward that 60% threshold, because plenty of popular-sounding amendments in Florida's history have fallen just short of that number. If it passes, most provisions phase in starting January 1st, 2027, and that's when we'll get real clarity on what your actual tax bill looks like as a new versus long-term Florida resident. I'll be tracking this amendment all the way through election night and into the new year, because this is exactly the kind of policy shift that can quietly reshape where American retirees choose to spend their next chapter. If you found this breakdown useful, subscribe so you don't miss the follow-up the moment Florida voters make their decision. And if you're currently weighing Florida against other low-tax retirement states, let me know in the comments. That might be exactly what we cover next.